In 2012, the suburbs of Atlanta were shaped by wealth and social standing. Families who had made it lived in this area, with their manicured lawns and high fences offering privacy and keeping hidden the underlying tensions. The grand houses lined the streets, and nearby were well-kept parks and prestigious schools, filled with the children of these affluent families. The Walker family appeared to embody the ideal suburban life. Their home, a sleek, modern estate with a large pool in the backyard, symbolized their wealth and success. Tall fences kept their private world out of sight, but behind those barriers, a darker reality was unfolding, one far beyond what anyone in Atlanta could have ever imagined. Darnell Walker, a prominent lawyer in Atlanta, was well known for managing high-profile cases and often made headlines for his legal successes. While his career flourished, his focus on his family faded. Darnell's wife, Nina, once a model, had shifted her focus entirely to social events and charity work. She regularly attended lavish gatherings, hosted elegant dinners, and was preoccupied with her looks and social standing. Despite their outward appearance of success, the reality within the family was far from perfect. Despite the Walker household's outward image of wealth and success, it was emotionally distant. Darnell was consumed by his work, and Nina was absorbed in her social life, leaving their 15-year-old twins, Isaiah and Imani, feeling abandoned. Behind the mansion's walls, their lives played out in a space where reality and illusion started to blur in unsettling ways. Isaiah was a quiet, introverted teen who always felt out of place in his own home. Struggling to connect with those around him, he often escaped into his own imagination, where he could control everything. While he appeared to be an ordinary teenager on the outside, his inner world was far more intricate and complicated. Isaiah had felt invisible for as long as he could remember, overshadowed by his father's achievements and his mother's social pursuits. The only person he truly connected with was his sister, Imani, to whom he was deeply attached. As children, they were inseparable, but as they grew older, their bond started to shift. Isaiah's feelings for his sister began to evolve into something more intense and troubling. He started to recognize that his emotions for Imani went beyond the typical sibling connection. Uncertain of how to deal with these feelings, he found himself unable to escape them. Imani, in contrast to her brother, was vibrant and charismatic, effortlessly attracting attention. Her striking appearance, inherited from her mother, became a tool she used to influence those around her. Imani was aware of her brother's emotional dependence on her and began to test the limits of his feelings as she entered her teenage years. What began as light-hearted teasing gradually escalated as she recognized the depth of her influence over Isaiah. Despite her popularity at school, Imani felt a sense of emptiness and dissatisfaction. Imani's interest in boys was transient. She frequently moved on from her admirers once they lost their appeal. However, her relationship with Isaiah was unique. She viewed him as a means of experimentation, a way to control and manipulate his emotions and desires. Imani's manipulation deepened Isaiah's confusion, leading their relationship down unsettling paths. Meanwhile, Darnell, a successful attorney, epitomized the career-driven individual who prioritized success and status above everything else. His work at the law firm provided him with significant income and earned him respect in the community. Darnell took great pride in his professional accomplishments, but his family was always a secondary concern. Despite his success, he remained emotionally distant, rarely engaging in his children's lives. He believed that their wealth and luxury were sufficient to ensure their happiness and well-being. Darnell saw the twins as symbols of his success and expected them to continue his legacy. However, he lacked a genuine understanding of their personal lives and struggles. To Darnell, as long as the children maintained good grades and avoided visible trouble, everything was fine. His career consumed him so completely that he overlooked many warning signs in their behavior. Meanwhile, Nina, a former model, was preoccupied with her appearance and social status. Nina's life centered around charity galas, photo shoots, and collaborations with cosmetic brands. She took great pride in preserving her beauty and youth despite her age. Though her social life appeared glamorous, she felt a deep-seated emptiness within. Nina seldom considered her children's well-being, assuming they would navigate their own paths. Her involvement in charity work and external projects served as a way to offset her lack of attention to her family. She often hosted gatherings at their home, where the twins were barely acknowledged or involved. Nina viewed the twins' academic success as an indication that everything was going well. Like Darnell, she failed to recognize the deeper issues threatening their family's seemingly perfect image. By early 2012, while the Walker household maintained a calm exterior, significant internal changes were beginning to take hold. While other kids their age socialized, attended parties, or engaged in school activities, Isaiah and Imani started to isolate themselves from the outside world. They spent most of their time together, either shut in their rooms or strolling around the backyard, sharing their dreams, fears, and private thoughts. Their connection, once special, was now evolving into something more profound and complex. Isaiah, naturally introverted, found solace in his conversations with Imani. She was the only one who seemed to truly understand him. As his feelings for her grew more complex, he struggled to understand why he felt such an urgent need to be with her all the time. Imani, on the other hand, relished the attention from her brother and recognized the influence she wielded over him. Her natural charisma and knack for manipulation gave her control over their relationship, which she initially exercised in a playful and seemingly innocent manner. Their parents remained largely oblivious to these shifting dynamics. Nina was deeply immersed in her social life and charity event planning, while Darnell was fully focused on his career. To them, it seemed normal that the twins were constantly together. They didn't perceive any red flags, assuming it was merely a strong sibling bond. They failed to see that beneath the veneer of family dinners and daily routines, something far more dangerous was taking shape. By the spring of 2012, Isaiah and Imani's relationship had grown much closer than one would expect between siblings. They began sharing thoughts and feelings with each other that they kept hidden from everyone else. These secrets included dreams that extended beyond their teenage years and emotions that grew increasingly intricate. Imani was the first to test the boundaries, experimenting with Isaiah's emotional dependence. She frequently teased him, claiming that no one could understand him as well as she did. To Isaiah, Imani's behavior seemed like validation of his feelings that she was more than just his sister. One evening in April, as they sat together in their room, their conversation shifted to more intimate subjects. Imani began to play with his hair, leaning in closer and closely watching his reaction. Isaiah felt his heart race as their first kiss happened spontaneously. In that moment, despite the inherent wrongness, it felt profoundly natural for both of them. Isaiah was entirely absorbed in the moment, while Imani, recognizing her control over the situation, continued to manipulate him. She convinced him that their bond was unique and that it was a secret no one else could understand. She assured him that their feelings were special and that they could trust each other more than anyone else. This was the pivotal moment when their once innocent relationship crossed into forbidden territory. As their feelings deepened, Isaiah began to lose control of himself, while Imani's influence over him intensified. By May 2012, their relationship had evolved into something even more intricate and entangled. To the outside world, they appeared as inseparable twins, but behind closed doors, their bond became increasingly intimate and complicated. Isaiah, overwhelmed by his emotions, began to believe that their relationship was a unique and profound form of true love. To him, Imani was more than a sister, she was the only person who truly understood him, and he saw nothing wrong with their connection. In contrast, Imani had a different perspective. For Imani, their relationship was an experiment in power, a game where she tested the boundaries of controlling Isaiah's emotions. Aware of his complete dependence on her, she used it to her advantage. She manipulated his feelings, convincing him that their bond was something extraordinary, transcending societal rules and norms. Imani persuaded Isaiah that no one could ever comprehend their bond, which only intensified his obsession with her. Their secret encounters became a regular part of their lives. They spent every free moment together, deliberately avoiding contact with the outside world. Their relationship became increasingly intimate, with Isaiah losing himself entirely in this connection. He neglected school, friends, and his own aspirations, focusing solely on Imani. His world narrowed to their shared room and the stolen moments they spent together. Imani, aware of her influence, continued to exploit Isaiah's attachment, though she didn't share the same emotional depth. By June 2012, tension began to build between them. The bond that once seemed unbreakable started to show signs of strain, cracking under the pressure of jealousy and insecurity. One night, Isaiah accidentally glimpsed a text on Imani's phone from an unknown boy. Although the message was innocuous, it triggered intense jealousy in Isaiah, a feeling he had never experienced before. The idea of someone else capturing Imani's attention filled Isaiah with anger and panic. He began to notice small changes. Imani spent more time with her friends, laughing and socializing with others, and her focus on him became less consistent. Isaiah started to question if Imani was using him, which intensified his obsession with their relationship. He couldn't tolerate the idea of anyone else being close to her or sharing what he believed was their unique bond. A deep fear of losing her began to take hold in his mind. Imani, seeing Isaiah's jealousy, initially relished the game. She continued to provoke him, fully aware that his dependence on her was increasing. However, as time went on, the situation began to spiral out of control. Imani recognized that Isaiah was becoming too serious about their relationship, which frightened her. She continued to flirt with other boys, not realizing the potential for tragic outcomes. Meanwhile, Isaiah began to lose control, overwhelmed by his emotions. Isaiah's thoughts grew darker as he began to view every action Imani took as a threat to their relationship. Unable to imagine her with anyone else, he started to see her behavior as betrayals. This marked the beginning of his attachment to his sister morphing into a dangerous obsession. July 2012 marked a turning point in the Walker household. Despite the hot summer and the usual routines, something had shifted in the twins' behavior, raising concerns for Nina. Although she had been preoccupied with her social life, she began to notice that Isaiah and Imani had become even more withdrawn than before. The twins spent almost all their time together, rarely leaving the house unless absolutely necessary, and avoiding their friends. Imani, who had once been active and social, stopped seeing her girlfriends, while Isaiah grew increasingly distant. In early July, Nina accidentally found a note on Isaiah's desk. The note contained Isaiah's feelings for his sister, expressed with such raw intensity that it shocked Nina. The words went beyond typical sibling affection, revealing something far more personal and intimate. "You're all I have. No one understands us but us. I can't live without you." These lines shattered Nina's world. As she read the note, a wave of terror washed over her. Her intuition signaled that something serious was occurring between her children, but she couldn't immediately comprehend the full extent of the problem. Nina was paralyzed with fear and guilt, unsure of what to do. Her mind raced with questions. How had she missed this? Why hadn't she noticed the signs earlier? In that moment, she felt unable to confront Darnell or the children about it. Nina was paralyzed by the fear of the consequences if the truth were revealed. By August 2012, the situation in the Walker household had become critical. Even Darnell, though deeply absorbed in his work, started to notice the troubling changes in the twins' behavior. To Darnell, Isaiah and Imani no longer resembled the children who once played together so harmoniously. Their relationship had become odd, overly insular, and tense. Like Nina, he began to sense that this wasn't merely a phase of adolescence, but he couldn't discern what exactly was happening. At the end of August, Darnell decided to address the issue directly. One evening after dinner, he gathered the family in the living room and, striving to remain calm, asked Isaiah and Imani directly about what was happening between them. He hoped for straightforward answers, wishing his concerns were misplaced. Imani's reaction took Darnell by surprise. Instead of showing embarrassment or withdrawal, as he had anticipated, she responded aggressively. Her tone was sharp, and she defensively protected both herself and Isaiah, which only heightened Darnell's suspicions. Imani's hostility made Darnell feel the situation slipping out of control. Meanwhile, Isaiah withdrew inwardly, avoiding eye contact with his father and sitting silently, as if he were not even there. The silence only confirmed Darnell's worst fears. He realized that something far darker was unfolding in their relationship than he had ever imagined. However, overwhelmed by fear for his family's reputation, Darnell chose to retreat rather than seek help or try to understand the situation. Darnell was determined to keep the scandal contained within the walls of their home. He hoped that by remaining silent, the situation might resolve itself if they simply avoided discussing it. However, this silence only intensified the tension and accelerated the looming disaster. By early September 2012, the situation in the Walker household had become nearly unbearable. Isaiah could no longer manage his feelings for Imani. His love for her had evolved into a consuming obsession that began to overwhelm him. Every time Imani spoke to someone else, Isaiah felt a searing jealousy. Even her innocent conversations with friends or classmates triggered intense rage. He began obsessively tracking her movements, eavesdropping on her conversations, and searching for any signs that she might leave him. Imani, fully aware of her control over Isaiah's emotions, escalated her manipulations. She intentionally provoked him, deliberately making him jealous to further assert her dominance over his feelings. In a way, Imani took pleasure in her brother's increasing dependence on her. Yet, with each new provocation, her own emotions began to blur. She struggled to differentiate between her manipulative game and any genuine attachment she might have developed towards Isaiah. In September, Imani began testing their relationship further. She proposed risky ideas, such as sneaking out of the house at night and meeting in secret locations where they wouldn't be seen. These nocturnal escapades became a regular ritual, providing them with a sense of freedom, but also escalating the tension between them. Imani began to have doubts about how far she was willing to go, but her need to maintain control drove her to take even more dangerous steps. Meanwhile, Isaiah sank further into obsessive thoughts, viewing their secret meetings as his only refuge and salvation. He couldn't think about anything else. At school, Isaiah became increasingly withdrawn, barely interacting with others. Even in class, his thoughts were entirely consumed by Imani and how to preserve their bond. By October, Isaiah and Imani began planning their escape from home. To them, it seemed like the natural next step in their relationship. They envisioned running away together to start a new life, away from their family and a society that would never understand them. They envisioned living in a remote location where they could remain undisturbed. Imani painted a picture of freedom for Isaiah, where their love could exist without judgment. Yet her true intentions were far more intricate and manipulative. In reality, Imani felt the weight of her manipulations. Her emotions had become chaotic, and she was increasingly uncertain about continuing the game. Deep down, she began to see Isaiah not as a partner in their escape, but as a means to free herself from her own turmoil. Imani recognized that Isaiah's obsession with her made him willing to do anything to stay by her side. However, she began contemplating how she could escape his dependency and start anew without him. Meanwhile, Isaiah remained resolute in his determination to stay with her, convinced that their future together was the only path for him. He meticulously planned every detail of their escape. They discussed how they would leave at night, where they would go, and what they would take with them. To Isaiah, this was a chance to start anew and preserve their connection forever. But Isaiah was unaware that Imani had her own agenda. She had no intention of staying with him as he believed. Her true goal was to use the escape as a means to break free from his obsessive love and move on with her life without him. October saw the tension between them peak. Isaiah was convinced that the escape was their only hope, but Imani started to have doubts. Their internal conflicts intensified, and each day their relationship felt increasingly volatile. The night of November 12, 2012 became the pivotal moment for the Walker family. That evening, after their parents had gone to bed, Isaiah and Imani gathered in their room to finalize their escape plan. However, this time, things took an unexpected turn. Imani, worn out from the manipulation and deceit, decided she could no longer continue with their plan. In her quest for freedom, she had met another boy who offered her a life outside of their toxic relationship. During their conversation, Imani coldly revealed to Isaiah that she planned to run away, but not with him. She intended to leave with another boy. Her words hit Isaiah like a lightning bolt, shattering his hopes and plans in an instant. The revelation crushed Isaiah. He couldn't grasp that Imani would choose someone else. His jealousy transformed into uncontrollable rage, fueled by the sense of betrayal from the person he had devoted himself to completely. In the heat of the argument, Isaiah's rage exploded. His emotions, already on edge from months of obsession and manipulation, led him to act out violently. The confrontation quickly escalated beyond words, with Isaiah's anger overwhelming his judgment and pushing the situation to a breaking point. In his frantic state, Isaiah's actions became increasingly brutal. His mind was clouded by rage and despair, and he struggled to stop even as Imani's struggles became weaker. The intensity of his emotions led him to cross a line he had never imagined, causing a tragic outcome that shattered their already fragile world. The realization of what Isaiah had done hit him with a wave of overwhelming horror and guilt. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of his actions. The fantasy of their escape, the idealized future they had planned together, was gone. All that remained was the stark reality of the consequences of their toxic relationship. Isaiah's panic and horror spiraled as he grappled with the gravity of his actions. His future plans, his love for Imani, and his sense of identity all crumbled. Alone with Imani's body, he felt a profound emptiness and disorientation, realizing that he had irrevocably destroyed the only meaningful connection he had ever known. The weight of his guilt and the finality of his actions left him paralyzed, unable to escape the bleak reality of what he had done. He understood that he couldn't stay in the house. The fear of discovery and the overwhelming guilt drove him to leave. He gathered a few belongings and fled into the night, desperate to escape both the physical and emotional consequences of his actions. His mind raced with thoughts of what to do next, but all he knew was that he needed to get as far away as possible from the scene of his crime. If anyone discovered what he had done, his life would be ruined. In a state of panic, Isaiah knew he had to cover up the crime. He hurriedly dressed and moved Imani's body through the backyard, taking it to the woods behind their home. He hoped that by leaving her body there, people would assume it was an accident or an attack rather than a murder. In the cover of night, he tried to erase any evidence of a struggle from their room, but his anxiety made it difficult to think clearly. Every sound seemed ominous, and every rustle made him flinch. He knew he couldn't rely on his judgment, but in his panic, he could only act on instinct. After leaving Imani's body in the woods, Isaiah returned home, trying to act as if nothing had happened. However, his mental state quickly began to unravel. He couldn't sleep, tormented by the images of his actions. Every sound seemed to remind him of his sister. Every look from his parents felt like an accusation. As the tension weighed heavily on him, Isaiah started to lose touch with reality. By December 2012, a horrifying discovery would mark the beginning of an even darker chapter. On December 3rd, the Atlanta police were alerted by the Walker family about Imani's disappearance. Darnell and Nina were frantic when their daughter failed to come home that night, completely unaware of her whereabouts. Meanwhile, Isaiah stayed home, doing his best to stay composed, even though he was falling apart inside. A few days later, on December 6th, Imani's body was discovered at the Walker residence. Some hunters passing by came across the body and immediately alerted the authorities. The police swiftly secured the scene and launched an investigation. At first, they suspected a robbery gone wrong or a tragic accident. But as investigators dug deeper into the evidence, things just didn't seem to fit. Not long after, the police summoned the entire Walker family for questioning. Darnell and Nina were heartbroken, but nothing in their accounts raised any red flags with the investigators. Isaiah, however, stood out right away due to his unusual behavior. Throughout the interrogation, Isaiah remained strangely calm for someone who had just lost his sister. His answers were brief and vague, and he seemed to be holding back his emotions. This caught the attention of the lead detective, who began picking up on subtle inconsistencies in Isaiah's account. Meanwhile, the media caught on to Imani's disappearance and the discovery of her body, turning it into headline news across local outlets. Articles highlighted the mysterious death within the well-known and respected family. Reporters swarmed the Walker mansion, eager to reveal the secrets hidden behind its lavish walls. Before long, the spotlight was on the family, with Isaiah at the center as the prime suspect. In January 2013, he was arrested for his sister's murder. As the investigation progressed, the police uncovered crucial evidence that strongly implicated him. The investigators first noticed signs of a struggle in Imani's room, subtly hidden but still detectable. Furthermore, the injuries on her body were consistent with those Isaiah could have caused. His mental state also became a key element in the prosecution's case. Isaiah's emotional distance, lack of remorse, and efforts to hide the crime only intensified the detective's suspicions. A high-profile trial followed, drawing attention from Atlanta and beyond. The prosecution, using witness accounts and key evidence, portrayed Isaiah as having a disturbed and unhealthy dependency on his sister. The prosecution exposed disturbing details of a secret relationship between Isaiah and Imani, leaving the public in shock. It was hard for the community to accept that something so dark had emerged within a wealthy, seemingly respectable family. The trial brought in numerous experts, including psychologists and childhood trauma specialists, to weigh in. Experts testified that Isaiah and Imani's relationship was characterized by years of emotional abuse and manipulation. Psychologists outlined how emotional neglect from the family, combined with a lack of parental involvement and the complex sibling dynamics, contributed to the tragedy. In court, Isaiah's testimony was marked by confusion and inconsistencies. He attempted to defend his actions by claiming he had lost control. However, his continued expressions of love for Imani only seemed to highlight his obsessive behavior. The trial became more than just a criminal case. The case revealed the devastating impact of ignoring internal family issues. Isaiah was convicted of Imani's murder and sentenced to a long prison term. The trial served as a stark reminder of how concealed relationships and unresolved problems can lead to profound tragedy. February 2013 brought a new reality for the Walker family, but it was a stark departure from their previous life. Isaiah was convicted of his sister's murder and sentenced to prison. There, he was left to confront the consequences of his actions in isolation. What he once perceived as love had become a nightmarish reality. Gradually, Isaiah came to understand that he had shattered everything valuable in his life: his family, his future, and the love he once believed was genuine. The initial weeks in prison were the most difficult for him. Isaiah's mental state deteriorated, and he fell into severe depression. The isolation of prison only deepened his loneliness, but it also prompted him to reflect on his actions. Initially, he attempted to justify what he had done, but over time, the weight of his realization became undeniable. Isaiah's obsession not only ruined his own life but also shattered the lives of those around him. Meanwhile, the Walker family struggled to recover from the tragedy. Darnell and Nina, once respected and admired in their community, found themselves shunned and isolated. The city that had once celebrated their successes now turned against them. The media's relentless coverage of the case made life unbearable for the Walkers, prompting them to leave Atlanta in search of a fresh start. They sold their home, which had come to symbolize their downfall, and relocated to another state, hoping to leave their troubled past behind. Yet, their past continued to haunt them wherever they went. Nina, overwhelmed by grief, fell into a deep depression. She couldn't forgive herself for failing to recognize the turmoil brewing within her own home. Darnell, who had always focused on his career, now sought to make amends, but the family was already in disarray. Their relationship grew distant, and both Darnell and Nina retreated into themselves, unable to communicate their pain to one another. By March 2013, Atlanta was still reeling from the tragedy that had affected the Walker family. Isaiah and Imani's story lingered in the city's memory as a shocking tragedy that seemed impossible to prevent. The media persistently explored their secret relationship, scrutinizing how such a dark reality could unfold within a family that once appeared perfect. Journalists questioned how the parents had failed to recognize the serious warning signs of the destructive bond between the siblings. For those who knew the Walkers, the story served as a stark reminder of how quickly love can morph into obsession, and how even the strongest families can collapse under unresolved issues. Friends, neighbors, and teachers remembered Imani as a vibrant, spirited girl, unable to reconcile her tragic end with their memories of her. Isaiah, once seen as quiet and reserved, came to symbolize the dangerous boundary between love and destruction. From time to time, the city hosted discussions and events to highlight the importance of mental health in teenagers and the need for families to monitor their children's emotional well-being. While the tragedy served as a valuable lesson for many, it remained an inescapable burden for the Walkers. Isaiah continued to serve his sentence, fully aware that his actions had obliterated everything he once cherished. Gradually, he became consumed by the memories of the past, sinking deeper into guilt and the painful realization that his love had transformed into a destructive force, erasing everything that once held meaning for him.